Are you stuck in an artistic rut, a plateau, where you can't see any progress and you don't know what to do about it? Do you wish your artwork was better and that you actually liked it? Would you like to know the tried and tested methods to making good art? In this video, I'm going to share all the secrets with a start to finish demo of my process while I'm explaining all these elements of a great painting to you, so you can see in real time with examples. In fact, I have 12 important tips and techniques to help you become a better, more accomplished artist fast. But in order to begin, you are going to need a little courage. So if you are ready to get out of your comfort zone and take some creative risks, then let's do this. A quick note about art supplies. I'll share a full list of the art supplies used in the description box below, and also as we are going along. But don't feel you need the exact same stuff. Use what you have and what you feel drawn to using, and I also suggest selecting a few items that you don't reach for regularly. Right, with that being said, let's move to my table and let's get started. The elements of successful art apply no matter what your style or what your genre of art is. And the first thing I start with is composition and design. So for me in this instance, I'm picking out some circles that I can draw around and also some sort of oval shapes as well. And I'm beginning to plot out a kind of compositional map, if you like. But you can begin with any element if you want to start with straight lines, zigzags, anything at all. You can even start with collage. It really is just a case of finding somewhere to start. And at this point I'll mention my next tip, which is I really feel you need an emotional connection to create a feeling or stir something. So I usually connect with an emotion, or I'm inspired by something, perhaps I've been out for a walk in nature. There's something that has stirred me in the first place in order to initiate this process. And it doesn't have to be anything deep and meaningful, although indeed it can be. It's just a place of connection. In other words, it's how you relate to your art and how others are going to relate to it, if that makes sense. This is the link to make your art more meaningful. So the next thing I think about while I'm creating my composition and design is the sizes of my subjects. How big or small are my focal points? What's mainly important here is variety. So in simple terms, big things and little things and medium-sized things, and then you can go with teeny tiny things and maybe one huge thing as well. It's all about creating interest to lead the eye around the page and have a variation in the size. Next I want to talk about mark making. So in order to do a variety again, this contrast and variety element is going to be coming up time and again. So in each thing I mention, you will notice it's going to be great variety that is your friend. Use a range of mark making tools and experiment and explore with the different marks that you can make with each thing. The possibilities are endless here, so make sure you give yourself time to play. Think thick, thin, medium, wiggly, straight, curvy, doodles, I love doodles, opaque, transparent. Again, it's about great variety and contrasts. It's all going to add interest and intrigue into your work. So you've seen there I sprayed something on the page, and that's actually not water, even though I'm working with water-based mediums. And so my tip here is to get out of your comfort zone, try new things where you aren't completely happy, and break some rules. And I'll talk about that more a little bit later on as well. But I just wanted to mention here that I've actually used some turpentine. It's actually an odourless thinner for my oil painting mediums. So it's going to resist and create some really nice textures and effects on the paper with my watercolours. If you're not sure what's going to happen, and of course it's safe to do so, just have a go. Try it out. What have you got to lose?
I was never the one to write up a song for just anyone. I was always the one to find myself lost in long conversations. Oh, 'cause I've always been told
At this part of the process, right at the beginning, but I have actually got something down, this is where I really want to remind you to play, explore, experiment, and have fun. Enjoy the process. This is creativity, and it is meant to be fun. And I know when we're trying to improve our artwork, then there is an element of work to that as well, because we are learning. But at these early stages, this is where you can really stay in your joy. And it's at this point as well where you'll really start to get into the flow. You have to genuinely relax though, so you might need to practice that. If I start to get worried or tense and I can feel it in my body, I take a break, stop. Sometimes I have a stretch, so maybe 5 minutes of yoga or maybe a dance break, whatever that looks like for you, to help you relax and get into your flow.
spectrum. Guess I finally learned my lesson. 'Cause you
So you'll see I'm continuing to use mark making to create the composition, and I often like to add in some words here and there as well. It brings in that elusive emotional connection, that feeling to stir something, and sometimes my words are visible at the end and sometimes they're not. But I'm moving more into contrasts and values, so the tonal value system. So in basic terms, dark areas, lighter areas, mid-tones, and I want some dramatic contrasts as well as some more subtle areas as well. At the same time as that, I'm also thinking about edges. So the edges of my object, when something goes into the next thing. Is there a stark line or is it more of a gradual fade? And then other parts are a mixture of the two. So again, contrasts, changes and variation. And on top of that, I'm also thinking about colour. And if all that feels a little bit overwhelming and too much to think about, then perhaps consider doing a monochromatic scheme where you're just using black and white and grey, or one colour and white. Simplify the process until you get more confident. And then you'll get to the point where you're not thinking about everything all at once, because some of it's going on automatically behind the scenes within your brain, if you like. So let me just make some suggestions about colour and colour use. Get to know your colour wheel if you don't already. It's your friend. And take time to learn a bit of the science. Use colour to your advantage. Know how to add drama, emotion, boldness, and subtleties for softness. I can do a whole other video on colour, so let me know in the comments if you'd find that useful. And please notice at this point we're doing all these things simultaneously. It's the unique combination of layering and mixing these formalities which brings out the personal style in our work. We are in charge. We get to decide what, where, and how much, without the need to be concerned about why, which brings me to my next point. Work quickly and don't overthink it. Yes, take pauses, percolate, ponder, but then get going again. Too long a pause can cause overwhelm and procrastination, and we don't want that getting in the way of our creative process, our sacred flow. I get very protective about my sacred flow, and I do things like I lock the door to my studio when I'm in my out there studio, and if I'm working from home then I'll let James know that I don't want to be disturbed. I've even been known in the lockdown when I had lots of family staying to put a notice on the door. So take the steps you need to secure your space. So if you're a little bit like me, where you haven't been creating that much in the recent weeks, months, or however long, it's very helpful to have some kind of rituals, activities, projects, however you want to call it, to actually warm back up and jump yourself straight back into the process. With a lot of creativity, I think it's something that's not talked about that much, in the sense that, you know, we know that our creative side of our brain is the right hemisphere, you know, it's all the sort of brain science behind things. But at the same time, we are using the other side of our brain as well. But I do think it's nice to have a mixture of both sides of your brain, if you like. So just think where I want to cut in here. You know, that's a prime example of me going into my left hemisphere, my thinking brain, if you like. You know, if I'm thinking about where I want shadows to be, and, you know, something a little bit more, you know, of a realistic nature in a sense, which might sound bizarre if you're doing something abstract like this, but at the same time, you know, there's elements of both in every painting that you do. If you think about it and analyse it carefully, even an illustration will have, you know, some abstracted parts of it as well, which I think can make things very interesting. Just kind of thinking, I want to get rid of, you know, some of this here. So that's me working intuitively, basically. You know, I want to get rid of something, so I don't want to think too much, because that might stop me. This is kind of like a battle of, just want to mix that wet into wet for a minute. Get some marks in there. Yeah, so a mixture of both is very powerful, shall we say. Activate both hemispheres of the brain, and don't be scared to do something you don't like as well. You know, you can always rescue it, use it for collage, fodder, paint over it, cut it up, make it into something else. So there's never that aspect really of going wrong, if you like, if you look at it like that. I think often things tipped or turned upside down, you know, for a completely new perspective, literally, can be a helpful way of continuing when you're maybe a little bit stuck. I'm using a lot of the Prussian blue, burnt and raw umbers, different kind of pens you've seen as well. So lots of different materials. I even used some oil paint thinners as well, so something like Turks. Mine's an odorless one by Gamblin, but, you know, just to spray on that, because that's going to create some really interesting, you know, we saw, didn't we, the kind of resist effect that happens. So that was kind of fun. So do things you're not supposed to do, break the rules. I think it's very helpful, you know, sometimes you can sit down, you can do a kind of painting. This is very much, you know, a Wendy painting, very much the thing I kind of go back to again and again. And I can sit and paint those until the cows come home, really, I think. But at the same time, I'm not pushing myself, and I'm not necessarily learning anything new. I might be honing my skills a little bit doing that, for sure. But at the same time, I want to have times as well where I am experimental. I'm just using kind of more of a blue than a umber on these parts, just to bring some brighter blue areas in to my darks. So yeah, if you stay in your comfort zone with the things you know, it's not going to push you. You're not going to learn new things. You're not going to have unexpected results coming out, and you know, you might get a bit stuck as an artist. So doing this process where you don't know what's going to happen. You know, I don't know what's going to happen in this. And I think that's a good thing, basically. You know, you might be in the middle of doing, you know, a really detailed fine art painting as well. Realistic, and you're really trying your best and, you know, working really hard. And sometimes you have moments within that process of getting, you know, seriously stuck. So doing something like this can really help loosen you up again when you've gone, you know, into tight mode maybe. So if you've never tried abstract before, I thoroughly recommend it. There are skills, you know, we're thinking composition, colour relationships, tonal values. It's very much, you know, still using the same formalities of painting that you would be using if you were doing a more realistic painting. So don't knock it, my friends, until you've tried it. I just want to try some really bold marks down here. Use a different set of brushes to how you would maybe normally, you know, anything that you've got that's not your go-tos, if you like. So surprise yourself. Allow yourself to play and experiment, enjoy it. Get back into that situation where, you know, you can have some creativity and you can seriously, you know, have fun with the process. It's not that huge pressure. Once I've got a load of kind of mixed media layers, I'm going to do what I call tight loose thing. So I think that's always really handy to kind of do a contrast of things. You know, you can do thick and thin marks, different colour combinations. You can go monochrome to some really bright fluorescence. You can go, you know, from one extreme to the next. And so I think creating the contrasts on every single level can really help you just completely throw caution to the wind, throw out the rule book, throw out your rule book as well, the place where you're comfortable and happy. Get rid of that. Get rid of the thought of thinking outside the box. You know, get rid of that box. The world is your oyster. The sky is the limit. Not even the sky is the limit. The universe is the limit. And, you know, if the universe goes on forever, then there is no limit. So it's a very courageous, interesting, educational part of the process. Very much something that you're encouraged to do, you know, when you do first year at art school, is to get really bold and experimental. You find things that you like and don't be scared. You know, the balance of that is to find some things that maybe you don't like. And so you have to allow yourself that as well. Otherwise you're not going to find those things that you like, if that makes sense. Everything is in balance, isn't it? As above, so below. So I am going to just keep making additions to this. Until I'm happy, until I want to leave it. I even have paintings that I play on, and one of the prime examples of that, let me just show you. Try not to wiggle you about too much. But one of my paintings that was my playground was this one, which is Bird Girl. And I still don't know to this day if she's finished. I haven't worked on her for a couple of years now, but this was when I moved out of the van and I went big again. You can't see her that well in a sense because I'm looking up at her, so she's kind of way up there on my shelf. But you know, you can see the areas where I've really played and then areas where I've really tightened up a bit as well, so you can see what things are. You could kind of see what's what. And then, you know, unexpected things have kind of emerged as well in the process. So I often think this is a really good thing to do as well if you're feeling a little bit rebellious. You're constrained by maybe something that you have to do. And you will understand this, you know, if you do something creative as your career as well, you know, where you make a living, then you've got other stuff to do. Like for me, it's, you know, packing shop orders, or at the moment, my current thing that I'm super procrastinating. And I'll be really honest with you here. I'm supposed to take pictures of those postcards and get them in the shop. That's what I should be doing, in all honesty. But this is more fun and I can do it after. You know, it's starting to dry now, so you can kind of see, I don't even know which way I want it. I kind of like it that way, but kind of like it that way as well, so maybe I want to do something portrait on it. I don't know, but that's all the fun of it, isn't it? I think as artists, as painters, as creatives, you know, no matter what branch of creativity that is your thing, it's really important, isn't it, to sometimes really concentrate and get really tight and detailed and, you know, focus in on something, the focal points of something, or the opposite, which is stay loose. And so if we're used to, by one of those kind of rituals that we use to get ourselves back into our zone, into our flow, if you like, then if we're used to, within that process, being loose and being more detailed, and we play between the two, then for me, that's the key, rather than just going in the studio and then splashing paint everywhere. That doesn't often, you know, put me in the mood. It can be quite fun, don't get me wrong. And at the same time, if I'm doing a warm-up exercise where I'm in my sketchbook with a pencil or a pen and I'm just really tight, I don't necessarily feel confident and warmed up and in my flow to go into a painting. You know, maybe I'm 65% into a painting, which is the scariest part. Why is it the scariest part? Well, you've become invested at that point. And so anything you put down, unless you're working digitally, where you can just use your undo or erase tool or do a different layer, you can't do that in analogue painting, which is a risk. There's no getting away from that, is there? So it does take courage. But at the same time, if you do something like this and you do that push-pull between tightness and looseness and have a play and experiment and have fun, you know, get messy fingers or whatever, then you're ready, I think, at that point to go back in and, you know, you've already done something. So you kind of haven't got a blank slate from the studio. Sometimes I've been coming in, and if you've been here the last sort of few videos, you will know I had a little bit of a mishap. I have been coming in a lot less recently, and I've been really sad about that. But I didn't have a serious injury, but at the same time, I lost my confidence. So I didn't want to come out, drive myself in and all that stuff that I've talked about. So I don't want to, you know, waffle on about that now. But it's had an impact on my creativity, even though I've, you know, set up a little space at home as well. And so this is just me doing what I would do to get back into things. And, you know, I don't often show this. So I think there's a page in my journal, a really old journal that you might remember a flip through, where I've got years and years worth of things that are really old now. They're beloved, and she's an old favourite. Yes, you may have seen that video, but I did an abstract piece in here, which was actually over the lockdown. See if I can find it. So these pages are kind of the same process in a way. Lots of mixed media and the circles as a starting point, loads of circles that kind of interlink and overlap where I wanted. I could use, you know, my own work as a way in, so I'll put that over there and then I can kind of be inspired by that as well. So that's another thing you can do. And if you're lucky, and you can actually tape your bits and bobs up and around you. So this is why you'll see, you know, lots of artists put their bits and bobs. I've got loads of finished and unfinished things around me, and I kind of peg things up, you know, that inspire and make me feel something. Little messages to myself, and, you know, I've got some loose florals going on. And this is why you'll see, you know, lots of artists have things around them because it inspires our process. It inspires us to the next thing. And, you know, some days you might have a breakthrough. If you're really, really lucky, you might have a breakthrough, and you might have something that really feels authentically you, and the process just came easy. And so, you know, I like to keep things like that. So I won't let things go. I won't sell certain things. And that reminds me of that place I got to doing a certain painting, a certain piece that felt like myself, that felt really authentic, and is also in a direction that I'd like to continue to go. So it might be a branch of my, you know, projects, because I like to have quite a few things on the go. I like to have some art journaling, painting, bigger paintings, smaller paintings, mixed media work, oil paintings, watercolours. There's so many things I absolutely love. Inks. So I've just kind of got my inks out because I'm like, I mean, how juicy are those? Look at the colours. So, and these kind of acrylic colours, yummy. So have things around you that really, really inspire you materials-wise as well. You know, for me, I love a little bit of gold paint and even some glitter as well. So anyway, I just thought I would, you know, pop in and explain what I'm doing because, you know. So I've gone through my 12 tips and techniques for becoming a better, more accomplished artist, and hopefully you'll become, over quite a short space of time, you might surprise yourself, much, much happier with your own work. So let's finish this little painting then, and then you can see how I resolve it. So I talked about how I like to come in and out with looseness and the details, and so that's what I'm doing here. I'm revisiting some of the fine work, some of the details, some of the close work, some of the work where, you know, you need to get a little bit tighter and use smaller tools. So you might be selecting your smaller paintbrushes or some finer nibbed pens, things like that. I'm also adding in another contrast, which is white and black. So I've got a white pen and a black pen. I'm moving around the page, working intuitively, creating interest and adding to the composition, how the eye is going to move around the page. And I do that with finer details. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I really like to use text in lots of different forms in my work as well. For me, this adds some meaning, because if you've been here a while, you will know I'm an avid and regular and passionate. I'm very passionate about journaling, and that includes a lot of written work. And so I also write a lot. Little phrases, little poems, all sorts of things come out. For me, it adds an extra layer of meaning. It can be a quite intimate and personal process, but it's also a design element as well. And anything added to the page, the paper or the canvas is of course going to add to the composition. So a really important part of bringing a painting to a close is how all these things work together as a whole. And each little element contributes a really important part to the story of the painting, of the piece. One of the questions I get asked more than anything else is, how do you tell if a painting is finished? So basically, creating art, especially in analogue form, as we've said, you know, there's no undo button. So with all these little micro decisions, if you like, throughout the process, we can become quite fatigued. And so when it comes to the end, quite a few people either finish too early or finish too late. Years and years ago, I found a blog about exactly this subject, and it said it's better to leave something 97% finished than overwork it. There's a level of freshness, isn't there, that an overworked finish doesn't have, and it's virtually impossible to get that back. So I think that's a really good rule of thumb. And the other thing to remember is it's up to you. So you are the creator, you are the artist, you get to decide. I guess for me, when I'm getting to sort of 85%, 90% finished, I slow down a lot. Maybe I take some tea breaks and percolate a little bit with it, see if it's got any hidden messages for me. Sometimes I'll just prop it up somewhere and then have a cup of tea and a little think, and that can help. I think looking at something in a mirror can help just reverse the image. That's really useful. And then also taking a little photograph, so just a little snap on your phone and review it in a different way if you like. You saw me earlier turning it in different orientations, and an upside down painting can often tell you things, can often say, you know, I'm finished, or there's a corner here that you've not looked at and it needs addressing. There's no definitive answer to that, but it comes easier with practice and experience as anything, and maybe that's not what you want to hear, but keep going, keep creating. The decision-making process and other parts of the process that feel like a challenge become easier and it feels more natural, as long as you remember to play, experiment and keep having fun, because it is supposed to be joyful as well. For my finishing touches in this particular painting, all I'm doing is making some additional colour accents, clarifying my lights and my darks in a loose fashion, so again I've gone from the details back to loose, and I'm making final changes to the composition at this point as well. I'm adding some final mark making with a selection of tools, broad strokes and some more detailed touches as well. It's definitely a slower part of my process, but it's also a process that I've learnt to love. The finishing part, if you like. Lots of artists talk about the stages of a painting, don't they? So if you think about it at the beginning, it's kind of you get into the flow and you have that looseness and that freedom. Then it tends to go through an ugly phase, what some people call the messy middle. And then the most challenging phase, which is resolving everything in the painting, and then finally to the finishing. So it's kind of like a 4-step process, isn't it? Anyway, I really hope you found that helpful, watching me process it as I'm discussing the point I'm trying to make. I wanted to explain it in a visual way at the same time, if that makes sense, seeing as it's a visual process. If you want me to go deeper and into more detail of any of these elements in this video, let me know in the comments and I'll get to it. And if you want more art tutorials, art process videos, then you can check out my Patreon community, where I upload 3 videos a month and a podcast and all sorts of other goodies as well. And my link to that and all my other places is in the description box below.
I did a lot of bad things, and never did I give in, just 'cause the thought of being vulnerable made me feel less than I am. I have never felt home till you entered my door, and from that moment I knew that a home is whatever you choose.
So I'm just going to do the final part of the process, which is just to put down some of these words I typed out earlier. And I'm going to kind of part hide them in a way with my matte medium, just to paste them down. An acrylic medium, so it works with all the layers. And yeah, just where I want to have a little sneaky word. So it kind of blends in, but I like things a little bit unexpected. And then over here I've kind of got follow your dreams, but I thought I would, let's see, shall we put a bit just here. And again, it's kind of hidden, which I like, so you have to look for it. And then we've got that shows up a little bit more. I was thinking of adding in a little bit of turquoise. I feel like that would work quite well, just brighten up some of those. Where I put in the Caron Dache Neo Color, which kind of goes a little bit turquoisey with the, mixed in with the gesso. So maybe I just want to, you know, brighten up here and there. So there we go. And yeah, the artist's manicure, of course. So I think that is all I'm going to do for now. So if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for keeping me company and watching till the end. Try to keep your lights shining bright, and I will see you really, really soon in the next one. Bye for now.
Took